Welcome back to The Basement. I'm Steve Lewis. This week, in advance of our deep dive into the year 1966, I want to begin a two-part look at the Beach Boys' final album of 1965, Beach Boys Party, released on November 8th. By all accounts, it's an album that wouldn't exist if Capitol hadn't pressured the Beach Boys for new material to release in the fiscally important fourth quarter of 1965. They had already released two outstanding albums during the year, Today and Summer Days and Summer Nights. Brian was understandably temporarily tapped out and in no position to come up with a third album of new material to capture Christmas sales. Of course, there are basically three ways an act can fill a gap in their holiday release schedule. They can release a live album or they can release a Christmas album. In the case of the Beach Boys in 1965, the problem was that just 1 year earlier, they had already done both. The third way is to release a best of compilation, which doesn't seem to have been under consideration. There were certainly enough Beach Boys hits to fill one out, but especially at the time, a best of was sometimes taken as a cue that the label thought the act's hit-making days were winding down. Capitol certainly didn't want to send that message for their hottest American group, and I suppose they also thought a best of at this point would hurt back catalog sales of the original albums. Under pressure from Capitol, the Beach Boys hit on a clever and unique fourth option, a Live in the Studio album of covers and Beach Boys hits, to be overdubbed to sound as if it was recorded live at a Beach Boys party. By all reports, the idea seems to have come from Mike. It certainly may have been suggested by the pseudo-live recordings that Johnny Rivers had been making at Western Recorders. To some extent, the theme is a continuation of earlier recorded attempts to show how much fun it is behind the scenes with the Beach Boys. On Shutdown Volume 2, the track Cassius Love vs. Sonny Wilson gave us a clearly rehearsed scene that takes place at a Beach Boys practice session, according to Al's introduction. The All Summer Long album brought us a snippet of mostly unstructured studio patter with our favorite recording sessions. As discussed in episode 260, Today Part 2 Help Me Rhonda, the Today album gave us Brian's audio verite experiment bull session with the Big Daddy, a deliberately unrehearsed attempt to capture the kind of talk and fooling around that goes on behind the scenes at a Beach Boys recording session. The sound of Marilyn passing out hamburgers to the guys would have fit comfortably between tracks on Party. Clearly, Capitol increasingly wanted to present the Beach Boys as unique individuals, the way the Beatles had been so successfully presented. On their 1964 album, All Summer Long, and on their most recent, Summer Days and Summer Nights, each member got a little space of his own on the back cover, and shortly after Party was recorded, it was announced that Capitol was planning to star the Beach Boys in a Hard Day's Night Help-style feature film. Those plans, which we talked about in episode 280, U.S. Pop Culture 1965 Part 9, fell through shortly after Party was released. The Party concept would have fit right in with Capitol's desire to see the group presented as a bunch of hip, fun-loving young guys, not just recording artists. To that end, the cover of Party shows each Beach Boy in an individual photo on the front cover, seemingly taken at an impromptu home jam session surrounded by party guests. The back cover continues the practice started with Summer Days and Summer Nights of listing the lead vocalists on the songs, giving fans an easy way to differentiate one from another. Unusually, the credit is missing for 4 of the album's 12 tracks. More about that later. New member Bruce Johnston also appears on a Beach Boys album cover for the first time, shown with the others taking part in a beach volleyball game. To make the package more special for the holidays, it came in a gatefold sleeve. The first for any Beach Boys album outside of last year's holiday release, Beach Boys Concert. Alongside a party-appropriate photo of an orange soda and streamers, we get more photos of the guys either individually or in pairs. And as prominently advertised on the cover, it includes a sheet of 15 fan photos taken at the same photo sessions on the beach or at the party. Party was recorded over 5 sessions from late August 1965 through September 23rd. One further session was held on September 27th to overdub party effects by the group, their friends, wives, and girlfriends onto the tracks chosen for the album. The first session for Party took place on August 28th. Though none of the recordings from that session made the final album, 2 of the songs attempted eventually became the first 2 songs on the album. Things kick off with Hully Gully. Even before the music starts, we get party noises and spoken asides like, "We'll have Greenwich Village just like that," and "Play it like it is, Carl." Hully Gully is sung by Mike with the same informal, goofy inflections he used on stage in novelty numbers like Long Tall Texan and Papa Ooo Mau Mau. He laughs during the first verse. It sets the tone and signals that this record is just for fun. Hully Gully was originally recorded by the Olympics, who were best known for their Coasters-style 1958 number 8 hit, Western Movies. Under the title Baby Hully Gully, it was initially released as the B-side of Private Eye in 1959. Private Eye didn't chart, but the Olympics had better luck with the B-side. It seems to have been a strong regional hit on the West Coast and peaked nationally at number 72 on February 28, 1960. The Hully Gully is one of those early 60s dance craze dances. I find it described everywhere as an unstructured line dance, which it obviously was. It's a fun opener for the album and lets us know exactly what we're in for on Beach Boys Party. Next up is I Should Have Known Better from the Beatles album A Hard Day's Night. It was a highlight of the album and just over a year earlier had been featured in the Beatles film. As the US B-side of the Hard Day's Night single, it peaked at number 53 on August 15, 1964. The lead vocal on the Party version, shared by Carl and Al, is a little indistinct. It almost sounds like it's just being sung by the crowd. The back cover acknowledges this with the vocal credit, "Carl and Al are in there somewhere." They come into better focus with Tell Me Why, and a strong bass line helps drive it along, making it one of the best performances on the album. Of course, it's also from A Hard Day's Night. In the recording session dialogue, Brian says it's his favorite Beatles song. In 1965, everybody was interested in singing Beatles songs, from major recording artists to startup garage bands. I imagine the Beach Boys enjoyed the opportunity that the Party format gave them to experiment with covering the Beatles. Tell Me Why will be one of the few Party tracks outside of Barbara Ann to reappear on a high-profile hits collection being included on Spirit of America in 1975. Next up comes Papa Ooo Mau Mau, which originally hit number 48 for the Rivingtons on September 22, 1962. The Beach Boys had already released a live version on Beach Boys Concert on October 19, 1964. It's the only occasion on Party in which they revisit a song that they'd already covered. It's one they all know well, and I'm sure it wasn't hard to put together. It fits the format well, and it's a fun performance. Next comes Mountain of Love. The song's writer, Harold Dorman, had taken it to number 21 on May 23, 1960. Johnny Rivers' version went to number 9 on December 5, 1964. Mike gives a slightly more disciplined lead vocal here against some simple but solid backing vocals, making it one of the album's standouts. The harmonica that dominates the track is played by Dino Desi and Billy's Billy Hinchy, making his first appearance on a Beach Boys record. In 1972, Brian and David Sandler will pay homage to the song in their composition Sweet Mountain, one of my favorite recordings on the Spring album. After that, it's back to the Beatles with You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. It's the third and final Beatles song on the album, and we're only 6 songs in. This one is more recent, from the Beatles' newest album, Help. It was a highlight of the album, featured in the film, and was one the Beatles didn't release as a single. On September 20th, while the Party sessions were underway, a single version was released in the US by the English pop folk group The Silky. It was produced by Lennon and McCartney and features instrumental contributions from McCartney and Harrison. As discussed in 279 US Pop Culture 1965 Part 8, the single peaked at US number 10 on November 27, 1965. That's just less than 3 weeks after the release of Beach Boys Party. The Party version gives Dennis a spotlight lead vocal. As is so often the case, his singing isn't technically great, but is highly evocative. I wish the deliberately shouted haze from some of the Party guests and the Party effects had been reined in a little better. This is one that really benefited from the uncovered treatment that it got 50 years after the fact on the Beach Boys Party Uncovered and Unplugged. We'll talk much more about this next time. At the beginning of the next track, we have Brian good-naturedly telling everyone who doesn't know it to shut up and go home. It signals a change of pace to a slow one with fewer party effects. Mike and Brian give a beautiful and still informal vocal performance on Devoted to You. The song had been half of an Everly Brothers two-sided hit single. The flip side, Bird Dog, went to #1 on August 25, 1958, in a tie with Little Star by the Elegants. The Everlys' Devoted to You peaked at #10 on September 22, 1958. That makes it the oldest cover on the album. The back cover of Party credits the lead vocals to Mike and Brian, the Cleverly Brothers. 22 months and a world of changes after its appearance on Party, Devoted to You will be used as the B-side of the Gettin' Hungry single credited to Brian Wilson and Mike Love, released in September 1967. It's easily the gentlest song on the album and a nice way to close out side one. Flipping the album over, we're back to goofy party fun at the opening of side 2 with Alley Oop. There were several competing versions of that song on the chart in the late spring, early summer of 1960. The Dinosaurs version peaked at #59 on June 13, 1960. Dante and the Evergreens version spent 2 weeks at #15, beginning July 4, 1960. The biggest hit was by the Hollywood Argyles, who took the song to #1 on July 11, 1960. It was the kind of novelty song that was popular in the early 60s and describes a man in the funny papers we all know. In 1960 and in 1965, it's likely that everybody did know cartoon caveman Alley Oop. V.T. Hamlin's syndicated Alley Oop comic strip debuted on December 5, 1932. By the time of the song, Alley Oop, his girlfriend Ula, pet dinosaur Dinny, and the other wild inhabitants of the prehistoric land of Mu had been running in newspapers for nearly 30 years. The strip will continue to run for decades to come. The Beach Boys version is fun, though they're pretty much covering the same ground they already had with Hully Gully and Papa Oomau Mau on side 1. Mike completely blowing the last line of the second verse, like great big lions and grizzly bears, and saying he forgot the words, reminds us that we're still in party mode. With Brian looking for songs to cover, it's no surprise that Phil Spector was going to turn up somewhere, and he does with the Crystals' There's No Other Like My Baby, which went to #20 on January 6, 1962. The Beach Boys had already covered a Crystals single, Then He Kissed Me, as Then I Kissed Her. With Devoted to You, it's the other slow one on the album and features some really nice vocals from Brian and the group. It still fits in with the rest of the party, but comes across as a little more polished than most of the other tracks, which may be the reason it was chosen for the B-side of their new single, The Little Girl I Once Knew, released just 2 weeks after the Party album. Next, the Beach Boys parody themselves with charmingly raucous, off-the-cuff versions of 2 of their hits, which sound especially wild coming after the relatively sedate There's No Other. Of course, live versions of both songs had already appeared on Beach Boys Concert a year earlier. Mike sings goofy, largely improvised parody lyrics to I Get Around, with lines like, "We always take my car, although it's a heap," and "We never get turned down by the girls we pick up on, not much." And he includes a nod to the heavily advertised deodorant Right Guard. Deodorant being just slightly rude and inherently juvenile comical in 1965. Little Deuce Coupe's lyrics remain pretty well intact, though it sounds like it's only because Mike couldn't come up with a good parody. Instead, the performance takes on an arch campy quality with the line, "She comes on like a rose," from the Coasters' Poison Ivy thrown in. If everybody wanted to sing the Beatles in 1965, the same was true of Bob Dylan. Mentioned in episode 273, U.S. Pop Culture 1965 Part 5, was an article that appeared in Billboard on September 4th, 1965, during the time of the party sessions, with the headline, "West Coast Clamors for Dylan Tunes." It talked about the many West Coast pop acts either covering Dylan tunes or adopting his style. The article noted that the Beach Boys are the only group represented on the charts with a summertime teen outdoorsy song, California Girls. Here, the Beach Boys follow Peter, Paul, and Mary, the Byrds, Sonny and Cher, the Turtles, and many others with their own Dylan cover. Appropriately, Beach Boys resident folk fan Alan handles the lead vocal. On the back cover, he's credited, obviously with humorous intent, as Al, a man with a message. The Times They Are A-Changin' was the well-known title track of Dylan's third album, released in February 1964. The Byrds recorded a version of the song on September 1st, just over 3 weeks ahead of the party version recorded on September 23rd. It had been announced as the Byrds' next single, but the group weren't satisfied with their recording. Instead, it ends up as an album track on Turn, 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 released on December 6th, almost a month after Party. Of course, the party treatment means that the Beach Boys version is far less of a production than the Byrds version, and the interjections from the party guests keep things from getting serious. There's only one track to go, but it's a big one. There's plenty to say about it and much more to talk about with the party album, so we'll leave it for next time. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me next time for part 2. Meanwhile, I look forward to your feedback and comments. Please hit like if you don't mind, subscribe if you haven't. Have a great week. Bye.